And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Welcome to Odd Reality Radio, the show designed to generate thought through entertainment. Join us as we explore the strange and unexplained, the unanswered and the unbelievable on Odd Reality Radio.
An error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
Welcome to Odd Reality Radio. I'm Ty West, and today I've actually dug up an interview that I did back in 2013. I actually began Odd Reality Radio under a different name and recorded this and one other interview under that podcast moniker. I'm going to leave it up to you to find out what that is, just for the sake of the mystery, I guess. Anyway, this interview was with a gentleman by the name of Jason McLeod, who is an author and a paranormal researcher who actually studied with the infamous paranormal couple Ed and Lorraine Warren. It's an extremely informative and interesting interview. Now, we're going to bypass the news in order to get to the awesome interview. Stay tuned. You're listening to Odd Reality Radio. We're here with Jason McLeod, author of Dark Siege. How are you, Jason?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about this fantastic book.
Oh, you're welcome, and I'm quite pleased to be on the podcast.
Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become an investigator of paranormal.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, ever since I was a little boy, I really didn't buy into what I was learning in school or in the church. And I was raised Protestant, that my father's doing. But I always felt an intimate connection with all that is and with Source or God, if you will. And I just didn't buy into what I was believing in church. And so I'd read quite a bit when I was young, and in my young years, and then junior high years, and even high school, I was always in the library just looking at books and researching and so forth. And then I found my first paranormal bookstore. Well, it wasn't called a paranormal bookstore. It was called Pymander Bookshop in Norwalk, Connecticut, which was just loaded with New Age, I guess you would call it. That's what the phrase of the time was. And That was a treasure trove of information. And I just was like a kid in a candy shop, because that was just knowledge that was just incredible. And I just picked book after book after book and just read and read and read. And I'd heard about a very interesting couple named Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were in Monroe, Connecticut. And I actually lived in Monroe for part of my life. My family moved around quite a bit for some reason. And heard about the Warrens living in Monroe. And while I was in high school, Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut, on the shelf, I found a copy of the book, The Demonologist, and by Gerard Brittle. And it was full of Ed and Lorraine Warren's most intense cases that were all witnessed by multiple persons in a position of authority, be they police officers or fire officials or town officials or EMS workers, somebody with some kind of an official title that is recognized by the public as being, someone who's a credible witness for such things. And it scared the living hell out of me. It was just absolutely incredible stuff that made Amityville look like a playhouse. Interestingly enough, it turns out that Ed and Lorraine Warren were the investigators that investigated the Amityville horror story, Lutz family. And this book was just chock full of their most incredible cases. And I read that in the fall of my senior year in high school, and nobody was home when I finished it. And I was scared out of my mind, really. And so I made a crucifix out of popsicle sticks and Scotch tape, and that's it. God's honest truth. And I was actually laying there. I mentioned that in the book, but I was actually laying there on my bed, and I was actually praying, just for protection and safety and so forth. And because when you read these things and you open your mind and your consciousness to them, you're opening a doorway, if you will. And I was just praying for protection and that nothing, would come and interfere in my life. And at my cat jumped up on my bed and, scared the living hell out of me. And then I opened my eyes after some serious praying, and there was a bright blue light from my VCR that just blinded me, and that scared me too. So I was spooked. And then I knew of the Warrens. I knew of the book. At that point, I decided this is just a little too intense for me. I believed it wholeheartedly, and based on the testimonies. And then I just basically decided that, this isn't for me right now. But the next summer, I was with my friend Lou, who was a former Army combat medic and was a current paramedic in Stamford, Connecticut. And we were in the car, and we heard on the radio, on the news, the story about 3 men and a baby. And most people don't know anything about this because it was pretty much inner circle with the Warren.
Right. I've heard this story, and it's fantastic.
Okay, excellent. And basically, briefly, it was in the editing phase, and Leonard Nimoy, who was the director, he was famous for Spock in Star Trek, one of my favorite shows. And they were in the editing phase, and they were panning left during one of the scenes, and they showed the shadowy form of a high-powered rifle. And they said, "What the heck was that?" So when it went back and panned right, as they're continuing, as the scenes go by, it showed the shadowy silhouette of a boy, a teenager, and scared the hell out of them. Well, interested them, I guess you would say. I don't know if it scared the hell out of them, but there was no prop on set of a high-powered rifle, and there was no teenage boy in the movie. So they called Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they investigated, and it turns out that there was a teenage boy who committed suicide in that house that they filmed the movie in, with a high-powered rifle. So I said to Lou, I turned to him, and he was in the driver's seat, and I said, "That would be so cool to work with them." And he said, "Yeah, no kidding." The next day, what did we do right then? We declared our intention to become paranormal investigators right then and there, and work with Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were local, who were very well known and very well respected. In fact, I think they were two of the pioneers in this whole craze that is now ghost hunting. It's really incredible how I never knew how incredibly huge this was until I got onto Facebook and saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and endless groups like yourself, paranormal research groups. I never knew there were so many groups, but we declared our intention right there in the car to become paranormal investigators and work with the Warrens. The next day, he called me up and he said, "You're not going to believe who just called me." I said, "Who?" "Ed Warren." I was like, "Get out," And he said, "Yeah." He says, "Ed apparently is having heart issues because of all the horrific things that he's experiencing." And he called Bishop McKenna, who called the chief of the EMS, who we called Stanford EMS, and that EMS chief recommended Lou because Lou has combat experience and, spur of the moment stuff where you have to react quickly.
Absolutely.
Injury. So he said that they invited me to their Monday night gathering at their museum, pretty much, where it's the Warren School of Demonology back then, and now it's just called Warrenology. But they basically invited him to their meeting, and I said, "You have to get me in there. It's time. Obviously, it's time because we declared to the universe that it's our time. We're ready to go." So he went to the meeting, and he said, "I talked to Lorraine, and she would like you to come next Monday." So we went on Monday, And I met the Warrens, and it was just like it was meant to be, you know. And she said that everybody who gets involved in this, not for reasons to get a cheap thrill and go and try to find a ghost or ghost in an orb, but who have a genuine interest in helping families deal with these situations and helping the spirits themselves came to be the key. So we were in immediately, and actually they sent Lou and I on our first case the very next night to a town just one town over, into a house where they were experiencing this woman coming through the wall. It was a duplex, or no, I'm sorry, it was a 2-story house, and on the second floor you had the stairway going up to the second floor, a bathroom straight ahead, and then a bedroom on each side. And the parents would see a woman walk through their wall every night at the same time, walk through their wall, walk through the door, down the hallway, into the baby's room, stand in front of the crib, scare the living daylights out of the baby, walk through the wall, walk through the crib and through the wall and disappear every night. And so that's all we had to go by. So,
wow.
Yeah. And we learned rather quickly, you know, how to properly investigate a haunted house and get the information and, you know, find out the history of the family and the history of the property and all of that. But we were just going in, you know, just to get information, really, to see, I guess they wanted to see how we would handle the situation. And that was really a profound experience, our very first night. And I don't know if you want me to get into that or.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's fascinating.
Okay. We got there and we decided that we would set up a candle in each room. And we had back then in 88, these were camcorders with VHS tapes. And we set up a tripod and set the camera up, aiming at the wall where they would see this woman pass through every night. And then we all waited in the baby's room, basically peering down the hallway, hoping to see her walk down the hallway, come up to the crib, and which the baby wasn't there. So that might have been interesting to have the baby there. But so the parents, you know, the husband and wife and Lou and I would wait in the child's room, the baby's room. So we left everything on. We left a little bit of light in the room just so there'd be, you know, wouldn't be too bright, but it wouldn't be too dark either. And because they said they see her in very little light. And so we're waiting and we're looking down the hallway, and all of a sudden it's like a bright blue flash of lightning went off in that room. I mean, whoosh, and a crackle sound. And we were like blown away. And I said, we're going to get the best footage ever in our first investigation, you know? So we're all excited and we walked through there, and they'd never seen that light before, but we all walked into the parents' room, and it was a very overpowering, sickly sweet almond smell. Just interesting.
Really?
It wasn't anything putrid or anything really awful. It was just a very, very sweet smell. And maybe she had almond perfume or something. I don't know. But Lou first sensed it, detected it, and then we basically smelled it. And then we didn't see anything. So we went back into the baby's room, and we waited exactly a half hour. Another blue flash of light happened, but it was half as intense. And we walked into the other room, and the smell was half as intense. And then nothing happened. So we waited in the baby's room for another hour. And then it was getting late, and we decided we would call it for the night because we weren't getting, you know, to see this apparition. So, right. But we all understandably wanted to look at the video and the videotape. So we put it into the VHS machine. Very excited. I'm like, we're going to get this blue flash of light. It's going to be fantastic. You know, where did it come from? And we're watching, and it's, you know, it's a slow process. And we hear my voice on the tape, and it said, we've just experienced the second flash of light. Well, there was nothing. Nothing.
Really?
Yeah. And Lou said, you hear that? And we said, what? That's a sinus node rhythm. There was a heartbeat on the tape. Bump, bump, bump. Very faint. We would have missed it, but Lou caught it because he's a medic. And then it changed. Bump, bump, bump. Bump, bump, bump. It was a different, I think he called it a diarthritic rhythm. And then a third heartbeat. 3 different distinct heartbeats on the camcorder. And now, after I just said we've just experienced a second flash of light, but nobody was in the room at that point. So no physical body was standing close enough to the camcorder that it would pick up a heartbeat. I don't think they could even pick up heartbeats in the first place, even if somebody was standing right there.
Right. Not with the technology of the day.
Right. Back in 88. So we were very interested in that. So we all thought that was very interesting. We're all very disappointed that we didn't get any light, but the heartbeat was interesting and the smell was interesting. So when we went back to the Warrens on the following Monday to go over the evidence, basically what happens is there was a lot of stuff going on back then, and a lot of different, we had about probably 12, 15 people who were very serious investigators who were interested in helping families just like this. Not going to the haunted, hanging out in graveyards trying to, see an orb or something, but people who were actually families who were dealing with situations in their homes. New England's a very haunted place just because of the age of the place.
Right. It's somewhere I want to visit for just that reason.
Right. So we went over the footage, and Ed basically said that she was there, obviously, and she wasn't going to give us any physical evidence, but what happens is they bypass the physical eyes and go right to the pineal gland, which is photosensitive. So we all saw this flash of light, all four of us. We didn't all have a mass hallucination or anything. And not just one person saw it, which would make everybody question the other, but everybody saw this flash of light. And everybody smelled the smell after Lou pointed it out. And she knew that she could contact Lou in a way that, would prove that she was there providing the heartbeat, but it's like she was toying around and wasn't going to give any physical evidence about what was going on. And that we all found that very interesting. But that was our first case, and it was a very, very interesting experience. And really, when we look at the whole scheme of things, we could have had a horrific first experience, which would have steered us clear of the entire investigation. Unfortunately, Lou didn't really continue in any other cases for some reason, because he had a horrific experience in Dudleytown. Have you ever heard of Dudleytown?
I'm not familiar.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that could be a whole different subject sometime.
Excellent.
Scared the living hell out of him, and he
well, that's unfortunate
anymore. Yeah, but it's a really spooky place.
Are you still in contact with him?
I lost contact with Lou over the years. I think he's in Florida somewhere now. I'd love to get him a copy of the book, obviously. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, we were pretty close friends, and we just lost touch, lost contact. But with Facebook, you'd think I would have found him by now, but I haven't. But so the most profound case, and I mentioned all of these in my book, is basically with the book, it's Dark Siege, a Connecticut Family's Nightmare. And it's the real haunting of a Connecticut family, and there's some extra stuff in there that has happened to 4 other families that I investigated over the years that were really, really profound cases that I threw in there for some additional content. But the most interesting case I investigated, as I explained in the 95-page chapter analysis section of the book, which is loaded with my own personal experiences and very similar to what I've started with here today about how I first started questioning what was really going on and what we were being taught, by our churches and our schools and so forth, and how I knew about the Warrens and met the Warrens and started in my first cases.
Right.
And up to this case, which was a case in Vermont. Now, this is fascinating because basically there was a farmhouse. It was just an old, huge property up in Vermont, and the family fled the house because of the horrific things that were going on in the house, such as the vacuum cleaner losing all power slowly and just completely dying, even though it was plugged in, there's no power, and then it getting ice cold in the house, and bangings and knockings and growlings and red, looking like red eyes and things like that. Very spooky stuff that when you don't have the ability to understand it or comprehend it, is very difficult for people to deal with. So they fled their house. So we decided that we would all go up there. And it turns out it was my mother's birthday, and she just bought a brand new Dodge Caravan, one of the first Caravans that came out. And an interesting story is she bought the brand new Caravan from the dealership, but they forgot to put any fluids in it, and the engine completely burned out by the time she got home. So she got a brand new one. That was burned up. But yeah, I guess that those people got fired, whoever they were. But so the new Caravan, I decided that I would drive. And I think I was the youngest guy I was 19 in the whole group of investigators. And there was a large number of us going. So I decided that I would drive. And I basically borrowed my mom's Caravan, and left early in the morning. But when I got in the van, I had the awareness to bless it. And basically, we're all infinite consciousness experiencing third dimension. We're all intimately connected to God or source. We have that divine spark within us, and we don't need a priest to bless anything or any kind of shaman or anybody else. We all have that ability. We've been told we're not powerful, but we really are. But I connected to my God source inside, and I said, I bless this van, and I invoke protection for everybody who enters it and for the van itself during our journey up to Vermont. And, I basically washed it in the blood of Jesus Christ, I said. And that was pretty much, I was pretty into the, very spiritualist, but leaning toward Catholicism at that point due to my grandmother's influence and so forth. And that's what the Warrens used. Primarily. Right. They're very, very devout Catholics. And they, that's the protocol that I admired and followed, because I really was a student of Ed and Lorraine Warren at that point, and who I respect tremendously. And, it was a very sad loss to lose Ed, so a couple of years ago, but Lorraine is still at it. And I just spent some time with her in March, but in her home. But so we left, and I was driving down the Merritt Parkway, which is a 2-lane parkway, north and south. And there's trees in the middle. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I see this car come up on the right-hand side passing me. It's a black BMW. This is November 10th. And it's very strange to have any kind of icy weather or cold weather during that time of year. And there definitely wasn't. It was about in the 50s or so. And this car started fishtailing as it was passing me. And I was like, what the heck? And I just kept my wits about me and continued in my lane. I was in the left lane, and this car was in the right lane. Started fishtailing. All of a sudden, fishtailing really bad, and then swerves right into, basically does a 90-degree turn into my lane. So I hit this, the driver's side door flush in the door, and I wasn't injured. And the van was not damaged so that it wasn't drivable. But, talked to the guy, and his window was smashed up. But he said, it's like I hit solid ice. And so the police showed up, and the whole rigmarole. And so there was no cell phones back then either. So that was difficult too. So an hour later, I pull off and make a phone call, and they were all very concerned. Lorraine especially, she's very sensitive. She's psychic, and Lorraine's a light trance medium, but she's very psychic and picks emotions up very easily. And they were very concerned because obviously there was no ice on the road. And that car looked like it hit solid ice. And whatever it was inside the house in Vermont knew who I was, because I was the driver, knew who the Warrens were, and knew that we were coming up there to investigate and potentially thwart their party up there of terror. And that had just, was amazing, and now I just look at it and I know that we're all connected, but you have these, and it's not human spirits that understand this. And that's the interesting thing. Human spirit is not going to be able to affect that car the way it did. Now, because I blessed the van and I blessed the contents of the van, of which I was one, on the way up there, I firmly believe that whatever it was that was affecting the car would have affected the van if I didn't declare my intention to have protection from the highest source of all, the highest vibration of all, which is God, the creator of the universe, Father, Mother, God, prime creator, source, whatever you want to call it, great spirit, it doesn't matter what religious affiliation is. It's that which has created all, and we're all intimately connected to him or it. There's no gender. The spirit has no gender. So there's, it's just a very interesting situation with religion and so forth. But
absolutely.
So we went anyway. We said we have to go up there and try to help this family and bring resolution. The van wasn't damaged or destroyed, and I wasn't damaged or destroyed, thankfully. So we all went up there, and we got up there around noon, and beautiful day, and we were in the field, and basically a woman was pregnant. Her water broke. She was loaded into a horse and carriage and rushing to the house to the midwife to give birth. And in their haste to get to the house, the carriage flipped and she was killed in an accident. Now, her last thought while she was alive or animating her body, while her consciousness was still attached to her body, was to get to that house to deliver the baby. Baby, 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 house, house, house. That's all she could think of. So where do you think she went? Immediately when she left her body, she avoided the vortex of light that comes for us all, that opens for us all, which is the natural transition to cross over into the fourth dimension, which is the spirit world. And she went right to the house. And then the vortex closes and then it doesn't appear again until you search for it.
It's a mother's determination.
Yes. Well, anybody with unfinished business, if you have a desire, and it was a very similar thing happened to this mother and woman and her mother in a car accident I mentioned in my book too. But what was interesting is that, so we were in the field and, this was the first exposure to these high tech gadgets that were around in '88, which was high speed infrared film, and just tape recorders, none of these EMF readers and things like that, like they have now. I didn't even know they had those actually. We were in the field and I had this feeling to turn around. And as I was the last person, in the group, to head back toward the house. And I just turned around and I had this inkling to say, come back to the house with us. And I didn't see her, but I sensed that she was there because this is where it happened, where her body was damaged beyond repair and where she left her body. Now, At that point, she could have been looking at me standing there and what happens is basically it's human consciousness. It's a conscious awareness, which is immortal and cannot ever be destroyed, is in that field, stuck in between the third and fourth dimension. And they're vibrating just high enough out of our ability to decode them with our limited five senses. They're there, but we can't see them, and that's why these people are using EMF readers and so forth, because you can pick up these subtle vibrations that otherwise are unexplainable. They wouldn't be able to detect if anything's there unless you have a psychic or somebody who is in tune.
Right. And
we're all psychic and in tune to a degree, but we hardly ever devote our time to developing those psychic senses. You have...
I believe that as well.
You have a novice who wants to learn how to play piano, for instance. And, you have a novice, you have an adept, and you have a master. And if you develop or you devote enough time and energy toward mastering playing the piano, you'll become a master. If you don't, then you're always going to be a novice and you won't really understand how to play the piano, right? So these people, including myself, didn't have any practice trying to develop my psychic senses. I've always felt like I was connected. But anyway, so when I was inviting her to the house, she could have been doing a 180 and having her look at this guy turning around, this 19-year-old guy turning around saying, hey, come back to the house with us. To her, she could be going, oh, he sees me. Or he can help me. She made a connection with me. And I made a connection with her because I reached out and said, come on back to the house. So at that point, we were connected. And I explain a lot of this through quantum physics and entanglement and string theory and so forth in the book, how we're all connected to that. When we make a connection, we're all connected. We're all connected anyway. But when we make a really deep, any kind of personal connection, it's like we have a cord connecting us. It's like we're on a spider web. So that turns out to be very important, as we'll see in this description I'm going to reveal to you, is that when we went back to the house, she was already attached to me or attracted to me. And it could be something as simple as common human attraction. If, she sees me as this attractive 19-year-old guy, physically attracted or attracted because you think that this person can help you or you develop some kind of connection and so forth. That's all it takes. So we were at the house. We were sitting around this massive oak table. The thing was just incredible. It was this Amish farm table, and there were about 15 people around it. So we're all sitting around the table, and Ed started to try to initiate contact. We have all the tape recorders going and a couple of people walking around with cameras and video and still footage and still cameras. And Ed basically starts trying to initiate contact with the spirits in the house, because we knew it wasn't just a human spirit in the house. She died, crossed over, but Lorraine was sensing several. And as Ed's reaching out and trying to initiate contact by asking them to knock on the table, to answer the communications by knocking once for yes and twice for no on the table to these questions, spirits were coming into the room. And Lorraine was there, detecting them, and one of the other men was there. I can't remember his name. It's been so long now. and people were snapping pictures, and the table started to shake ever so slightly. It was wobbling. And this was a huge table, and we all had our arms on the table. And all of a sudden it started shaking and then like rocking and then up, like legs coming off the floor and boom, 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 going off on all things. And,
incredible.
And this one guy, it was my first experience with this type of stuff. And this one guy who was in our group started going, "It's coming, it's coming, it's coming." Like, and Donna was this one woman saying, "Calm down." And all of a sudden, Ed said before all this started happening, he says, if there's the spirit in the house, this woman entered Jason. And I was like, that's not funny. I was like, to say that, that's a big no-no. But anyway, so when the table was rocking and all of a sudden, it's like my jaw dropped and tears just flowed out of my eyes. And I said on the tape, Lorraine, the sadness, total. I mean, guys can hold back tears,
right.
Tough. But I mean, tears were just flowing out of my eyeballs. I couldn't even believe it. And I was just overwhelmed by this sadness like you can't even imagine. And that was her projecting her current state of emotions on me. Now, we say, well, she died 200 some years ago. She's been in this state for this whole time. Well, to her, it's like it just happened. Where's my baby? She's crying her eyes out. Can't find her baby. Baby's gone. Now, baby, the spirit of the consciousness that was going to enter or fuse with the body of the baby permanently after birth. We say it usually only happens minutes before birth, during birth, or after birth. You actually really make a full connection because we go in and out many, many times. The Tibetans call it the bardo, or the in-between state, which is very interesting. There's a book called Life Between Life. Baby either never entered the body because it realized that its experience was not going to be possible. Its life experience was not going to be possible, so it didn't ever come down. Or it was in the body and then just crossed right over the way that spirits are supposed to cross over, enter the spirit world and go through the vortex and enter the spirit world. Well, regardless of why the baby wasn't there, which avenue or which experience it partook in, it's not there, and she's frantically searching for the baby. So that's the sadness that she felt. So I made an empathic connection with her at that point, where I was just overwhelmed by her incredible grief. And during the night, things would happen where we all separated into different rooms, and I never felt frightened, no matter where I was, no matter what was supposed to be going on in the house, whether there were supposed to be demons in the house or a mixture of human and inhuman spirits or whatever it was. I just always felt protected, like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this, and, I'm here to try to witness evidence for the group, so we can figure out what's going on. And you basically determine what types of spirits are in the house, not by EMF meters or anything like that, but by what activity the investigators witness themselves. And when you have cases where there's inhuman spirits in the house, which is rare, but very real, you'll get out of the ordinary, incredibly crazy things happening. The human spirit can only lift a couple pounds worth of weight. And it's not lift, but it actually can affect with its soul mind, with its consciousness, can only affect things of a couple pounds. So turning on the shower, for instance, like you mentioned earlier when we were off air, is easy. Easy is once you learn that you can manipulate things. Because when you leave your body, you have no physical arms or legs to manipulate anything with. So it's basically learning how to use your energy. And when people say something is moved, oh, that dish just moved across the table. Did you see that? Or everybody will see a cup or a cup and saucer slide across a table, and in some cases fly off the table and go smashed into bits. Well, that moved by itself. Well, nothing moves by itself. There was definitely consciousness directing its energy at that cup and saucer, which we can't see again because it's outside of our limited five senses.
Right.
Code, but something's manipulating it. So what was happening are people started being shoved, not violently shoved, but like pushed, eased, if you will, down the stairs. As they're walking down the stairs, you'd see people's shoulders just move, like get out type of stuff. And
was everybody affected?
No,
or was it just kind of a select few?
Not everybody, but we all witnessed the people being pushed down the stairs.
Okay.
And Lorraine would be sensing things, and gosh, I can't remember the other guy's name, but he was almost as sensitive as Lorraine was, but very, very psychic, and would pick things up, and they would say there's a man in here with a hat on, like a top hat, very serious. All in all, there were about 7 or 8 different spirits in the house and several inhuman. And I can get into all that too. It's either today or another time. But so when we decided we would leave, we needed to call it for a night, because basically here's another interesting thing is that when we got there, it was cold up in Vermont. So we turned the heat on in the house, and we all went to the local restaurant to, gather, to basically have food, have a meal, and basically talk about the game plan, about what we were going to do.
Right. Regroup.
We would group before we actually went in there. But when we turned the heat on, what are we doing? We're lending energy inside the house. And there was also a full moon at that point. So that was a double whammy, really, energy-wise.
So the lunar cycle, it affects it as well?
Yes. Yeah, you'll get greater activity with a full moon than you will with a small moon.
Interesting. I'll have to take that into account.
Yep. And so basically we were there, back at the house, and we decided things were getting a little too hairy. People are starting to get physically, assaulted, pretty much being put down the stairwell. Nothing like, like I said, you're not being violently shoved down the stairs. You're just being eased, like, get the hell out of here type of stuff. And so when we all decided, Lorraine and Ed decided, because they were the leaders, they said, we're going to call it. We're going to head home. We all went into the foyer, and I was putting my shoes on, and all of a sudden, tears again, all right, flowing out of my eyeballs in this incredible sadness. I said, Lorraine, and I turned, they looked, and I was just crying. And then it happened again on the ride home. I was driving the car, and I turned on the light, tears just flowing down my face, and they all white lighted me, Christ lighted me, and prayed and so forth, because I made a connection with her, and she was attached to me at that point. And I was easy to pick up her emotions, because I developed an empathy. And she said, anybody who gets involved in cases like this just by being exposed to it, starts to develop their sensitivities more than people who aren't involved in this type of thing. It's like your antenna, you're picking up these signals better, and which is your pineal and your pituitary glands working in unison. But so on the way home again, it happened. And then the next day, I was writing a newspaper column called Hauntings for the Sacred Heart University newspaper in Fairfield, Connecticut. That's where I was attending college, and it was a Catholic university. And they developed quite an interest in what I was doing, because, the Warrens were very well known, and they conducted several college lectures there with audio visual. And you want to talk about some scary stuff. I mean, real mind-blowing voices and exorcism footage and unbelievable stuff. So I was writing the newspaper. It was just about getting dark on Monday, and I called Lorraine up and I asked her, I said, I think, when are we going to go back to Vermont? And she says, well, we just got back. We haven't, got a hold of the family yet, so we really don't know yet. And I said, okay, well, have a great night. I'll talk to you later. And a minute later, I called her back and I said, Lorraine, I just really feel strongly that we need to go back to Vermont and help that woman, And she said, Jason, I just told you the family fled. We don't have any way to contact them. We don't have permission to return, which is very important.
Absolutely.
Even though the house was vacant, we don't have any permission to return. We had permission at one time. And I said, okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry to bother you again. I'll talk to you later. A minute later, I called her back and she said, Jason, are you writing about this for your newspaper column? And I said, yes. She said, you're drawing her right to you just by thinking of her. And what's happening is I'm picking up her grief and her emotion and her sadness, but also her desire for me to help her, go back to the house and help her. And at the time, I didn't know how to help her, but now I do. And what I would help her with is come to understand that, listen, when you were in a rush to go to the house to give birth, the carriage crashed, your body, was damaged beyond repair. So your consciousness left the body. And your last thought was to get back to the house and deliver that baby. But baby is waiting for you on the other side, and you can describe it as heaven, or you can describe it as with God, or whatever you want to describe it as. But you would assume back 200 years ago that most people were Christian in New England. And you would explain to her that, baby's over there. You ran away from that light. You remember seeing the light, and you talk to them like you're talking to them like they're there, because of course they are, and you're trying to have an intelligent conversation. And this is the focus of all the work that I do now. And in fact, what I'm going to be doing tonight I'm going to dinner and with friends who know this couple whose house is apparently haunted here in Austin, Texas, and we're going to have dinner and basically discuss what's going on, discuss my book, and then see if I can make contact with this spirit and basically, or spirits, and coax them into understanding their current situation.
Now, I'd like to briefly mention the new website, oddrealityradio.com, once again, where you can find more information about this week's guest as well as all our past guests. I'd also like to mention the new voicemail number. It's 206-338-0947. Feel free to call in, leave me some feedback, a joke, or a personal encounter. It's always just great to hear from you guys. And now, back to the interview with Jason McLeod. You're listening to Odd Reality Radio.
This is what starts to really get me after learning that there's so many paranormal groups and so many groups called ghost hunters out there. Start with the series Ghost Hunters, which Ed and Lorraine Warren were going to be the main ghost hunters, but they were getting older and they wanted somebody who was more, entertaining and somebody who was younger and more appealing physically, I guess, to the masses. It's all about money on television, So
Absolutely.
So my big thing was, we don't hunt humans. And in most haunting scenarios, if it's a true haunting scenario where it's an actual discarnate, earthbound human lost soul or consciousness, we don't hunt them. I want to help them. And I wanted to help that woman.
Absolutely.
Or she wanted help. So it's basically coming, and that's what I started to turn my focus on when I was doing cases in Washington State. Basically, I transferred to Washington State, and that's a whole different subject too. But basically, my emphasis is helping these discarnate, meaning they've left their bodies. They're no longer attached to their physical bodies. And when you leave your body, when your body ceases to function, because nobody ever dies. Nobody in the history of the world has ever died, in quotes. We've left our bodies. We're still fully conscious, fully aware, energy beings vibrating at a frequency that is no longer discernible to the people in 3D on the third dimensional plane. But you're still very conscious and very much alive. You have no use for your human body at that point, and you can care less. It's like turning in it's like turning in your used car and cleaning out the glove box and taking all your effects out of it because you're going to go get a new one. And that's all it is. So you have no connection to the body anymore, and the spirits in these cemeteries are not going to be consciousnesses of people whose bodies are buried there in the cemetery. You don't care about your body. You may stick around just to check out your funeral, or you may cross over and then come back. Once you cross over, you can still come back if you want to, but you have no need to. It's like, why would I go back there? You're off in this higher learning at that point. But so these spirits in these cemeteries aren't people. They're often negative energies and entities that people are going in there and attempting to summon through the most god-awful negative paranormal object on the planet, the Ouija board, which is the source of most all cases of demonic infestation, oppression, and which eventually could lead to possession and often do, or summoned there through black magic or through sorcery or necromancy, which is very real. Ed had all kinds of stories about all of these sorcerers and people who intended to go to these cemeteries and summon diabolical, inhuman entities, thinking that they're going to get some power from them, or just to call them and to unleash them on an unwitting public. Just incredible stuff. And people,
Absolutely.
I feel like I've been talking too much and not letting.
No, you're absolutely fine. I was actually going to say, just to try to tie it back into Dark Siege, and you kind of hit on the point with the Ouija board. The story itself is extremely detailed, and it's full of multiple events of high strangeness, including, things that surround, kids using a Ouija board. What is your opinion of the Ouija board?
The Ouija board, and I'll use a direct quote from Ed Warren, who, again, they're my mentors, and I learned everything I know in the beginning from them because they were so knee-deep in it all. Thousands of cases to the point where I met them, and he said the Ouija board is old and even timeless, and was specifically created or given to man. He basically said that tarot cards and pendulums and all these things, divination tools, are not necessarily evil, and were given to mankind to help us to discern, which is a term that Lorraine uses quite often, basically picking up information and using that information, to benefit us. But on the other hand, the Ouija board is kind of like the opposite of that. It was given to mankind as a balance, because everything is balanced, yin and yang, light and dark. And that it had to be offered as a balance, which is the negative version of any kind of divination. When you're taking a Ouija board, you're opening your consciousness. Most people think they're just games. And I played around with one when I was 17, after my grandfather passed away, just with a friend, and thankfully nothing happened. But I was specifically trying to contact him. Okay. So when you use a Ouija board, you're opening your awareness to the possibility that it exists, that it's real. And you're opening your awareness and your consciousness to understand that you could have the ability to contact those not in physical form or on the third dimensional plane, but in the spirit world or beyond. And nobody knows where beyond is, really. So right. It's like taking like one of those megaphones and putting it up to your lips and pulling the trigger and say, come mess with my life. Because if you're not set your parameters and say, nothing, I'm using this Ouija board as a tool to contact such and such specific entity, okay? Whatever Donald Jones, whatever your grandfather's name was, or if you know his middle name, even better, because we identify with a name. Names are very, very powerful. So if I'm setting my consciousness to experience and contact Donald Rupert James, this is a fictitious name, and nothing of a separation consciousness is allowed to enter this room or this house or come anywhere near me, but only beings of unity consciousness who are here for my highest good and for the highest good of the planet and for the highest good of Donald Rupert Jones. And when you don't verbally oppose something that's said to you, silence equals consent. So to set your intentions is very important. Most often nobody does that at all. I didn't do it the first time either, but I was very specific about calling in my grandfather. Now, when you call somebody into a Ouija board, everybody has their hands on the planchette, and everybody toys around the first time, moves it themselves, and says, that was amazing, but then they confess that they did it. So you're toying around with it. Everything is innocent and sweet, and it's very low key and non-threatening. But the minute it starts moving by itself, then there's some issues going on, because then everybody starts to get a little scared, right? So you're sending all this fear energy out there. So mostly, when you send a blind invitation using a Ouija board, which is made in Salem, Massachusetts, by the way.
How appropriate.
How interesting, correct? So, and they're sold all over the country, all over the world. And nothing but awful harm comes from their use. So I don't even know why they're sold, but It's very interesting. So, but if you're sending the blind invite out there for people to come and mess with you, nothing of a positive nature, none of your relatives, none of your friends, nobody's going to come through and try to talk you to the Ouija board, really. But anything of a negative energy will.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned that fear, I kind of associated that as a blood in the water for sharks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Fear. They love fear. They feed off of fear. These inhuman spirits I'm talking about. Basically, in Dark Siege, I don't know how much I want to give away of the story, but the 6-year-old girl, Kelly, and her mother, drive by Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut, which is one of the most haunted cemeteries in the country, where the White Lady has been seen many times, photographed on video by Ed Warren. Very well-known cemetery. When they drove by, and the mother, who's an artist, which makes her a natural sensitive, tells her little 6-year-old girl, be very watchful. We don't want any ghosts to follow us home. And naturally, it scared the girl, Kelly.
Right.
But she was opening her awareness and her consciousness to saying, maybe I'll see a ghost in the cemetery. And there was an electrical storm going on, so that was lending energy to the situation. This is all very real. And so she saw in the middle of the cemetery this black cloud, gray cloud start basically coming in, folding in on itself. And next thing she knows, she saw a man walk out of the mist and scared her to death. And so she made contact with this, and it can tell when they can see you.
And aren't children a little bit more sensitive as well? Isn't that another component to this?
Yes. Children before they reach puberty age, when they're told to grow up and stop seeing invisible spirits and invisible friends, they're interested in other things at that age, obviously, turn to close the veil. They call it closing the veil, or just they're shutting off. They're shutting off their awareness, their to their psychic sense, because they believe it's not possible. The interesting thing is that we're taught as children that Santa Claus is real and the Easter Bunny is real and the Tooth Fairy is real, but spirits aren't real.
I have to agree with you there. I don't understand the meaning behind it all.
Right.
But that's kind of the point of what we're doing here with the podcast and with your book.
Right. So we're being lied to since we're little children by our gods, our parents. It's very traumatic when we learn the truth. So people run away from the truth because sometimes it's too scary. We didn't want to believe that Santa's not real. We don't want to believe that spirits are real, and we don't see them. And it's, why dabble in this type of thing? Why you just live your life and be happy? And you don't want spirits in your life because they can interfere with your life. And then indeed, they definitely interfere with your life. So basically, Kelly made contact with the ghost. Very, very scary. The ghost follows them home. It didn't have to follow them home immediately, but it made a connection with Kelly. So all I had to do was think of Kelly, and instantly it would be wherever Kelly is on the planet. And that's how fast spirits travel. And in the book, I described through the analysis section how that's all possible through the most well-documented case of haunting phenomena called the Ghost of Flight 401. And that's all detailed in my book too. But when the next day, the parents are leaving to go to Vermont, ironic, to go and sell their artwork, hopefully sell their artwork to a bed and breakfast up there in Vermont and get away for the weekend. So Kelly stays with a neighbor. The older sister's going to be doing things, but Tyler's the 16-year-old son, who of course instantly poked fun of the haunting that Kelly allegedly saw, and made fun of it and tried to scare her further in the evening. But when that's
what 16-year-old boys do.
So, he was just the typical 16-year-old kid, very loving boy, but, typical kid. So when he and his best friends decide, come home after school, they start experiencing haunting phenomena going on themselves. And then one of them has the idea to go and get a Ouija board. And of course, the other two, Tyler says that thing is stupid. It doesn't work. It's, shouldn't be doing those things. But they eventually decide to go get one. And their intuition was right. Don't mess with it. And they actually had an angelic encounter in the toy store. And that, I believe, is a guardian encounter or a spirit guide encounter or even an angelic encounter, basically warning them against getting it. At this point, guys, your lives are really going to be destroyed, and you have the choice whether to get this board or not. And that's very real, and it happens quite often, actually, as we don't know.
Absolutely.
I wrote Dark Siege basically because it was a very real haunting that I investigated on my own. after I graduated from school when I was investigating in Washington State, and basically came back and decided to, whatever comes my way, to just really, investigate it and so forth. So it was very, very interesting. And I wrote it in the fashion that I did because I have a BA in English creative writing. That's what I went to college for. But, and I love writing about weather, and about just atmospheric effects and so forth. So I think it was very, very effective. But the story is very real. It's about the very real dangers of the negative occult, specifically Ouija boards, about how we make these connections and how things can quickly escalate and get out of control by challenging unseen spirits in the house and thinking that you're as powerful as they are. In reality, we are super powerful because we are infinite consciousness connected to source. And I always say that if you look at the brilliant radiant sun and liken that to being source or God, and one individual spark is cast off from the sun, that's who we are. Now, just like you have a cell that divides, that the cell is cast off or, divides and goes off on its own. But what does that cell become? It becomes just like the host cell, doesn't it? So if the word human means God-man. So we're all, we're all individual aspects of the whole of God, never separate from him or from each other, because we're all the same. And we're all here experiencing a third dimensional life in a third dimensional body, but that's not who we are. We're not our body, and we're not our story. We're not our career, and we're not our name. It's just the experience that we're experiencing. And and we do absolutely survive the death of the body. Nothing that happens to the body, even if the body is completely destroyed in a nuclear explosion or a virus kills it, or it's riddled with bullets, or, beheaded, nothing that happens to the body affects the eternal, immortal soul or consciousness that we are,
Right.
And so everybody has to experience this tunnel of light when we leave our bodies at the time of the expiration of our bodies. And I liken it to a spacesuit. We have to wear a spacesuit to go in outer space. We have to wear a scuba suit to go underneath the ocean. We need a third dimensional electrochemical biological spacesuit, which is the body, to experience third dimension here and third dimension. But when the body expires, the soul goes off, because we're immortal, eternal vibration. We're vibratory beings. It's all about, it's just energy and frequency is all we are. High frequency versus low frequency. Demonic entities are extra low frequency, hunt, kill, hate, feed off of fear and negative emotions and so forth. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, it's love and fear, love being the highest frequency and fear being the lowest frequency. So that's very interesting when it comes to the whole scheme of things too. Basically, I wrote the book, which is a very real case of haunting phenomena and things that have happened to families that I've experienced, and witnessed, and how it's resolved. I'm actually in the book as the character Lance. I was going to portray myself by name, as the lead investigator that gets involved. And then I decided it's so hairy that I bring in mentors, which are actually a fusion of Ed and Lorraine Warren and my friend Yvonne Smith and another gentleman. But the interesting thing about the book is that it explains the process of going about, at least our process, the Warrens' process that I learned, which turns out to be an excellent process. That was the original process. These guys,
Absolutely,
they're the original Ghostbusters. It's
they really are. Is now, and I could be wrong here, but are you familiar with the original movie, The Changeling?
No.
Okay, there's a couple in that movie, and I have to say that if you do get a chance to see it, it's fantastic. But it's a couple that does resemble a little bit Ed and Lorraine.
Okay, interesting.
On that note, is there any movies that you know of that characters are based on them?
The Haunting in Connecticut and The Haunted, which was a made-for-TV movie, which is a case involving the Smurls in Pennsylvania. Okay. Is a very interesting case, and it's a very well-documented case. In fact, it went public and went on the news, called The Haunted. I read it years ago and just actually got it again in the mail because I have no idea where all my old books went. through Amazon for like $3. So that was interesting. So I reread that and I was like, it's interesting. It's, I don't want to criticize somebody else's writing, so I won't, but it's, an interesting story, and it's a true story. And the movie The Conjuring, which is coming out in July, Ed and Lorraine Warren are portrayed in that by name. And that was a very, very real case that happened in Rhode Island, I believe back in the 70s. Well before I got involved. I was only 2. And so they're portrayed, by other characters, young versions, of course, because this was back in the 70s versus the couple that I met back in 88. So that's
Right.
very interesting. And I was with Lorraine in March discussing that, and Father was there, and we were discussing my book, and I gave Lorraine a copy and signed it for her and everything. And so she's excited to go. She's being flown out to California for the premiere. And I said, boy, I would like to be out there and be able to hand a copy of my book to the producer, because I think it'd make a great movie. I really do.
Absolutely.
So I wrote basically the book, and I was in it as a lead investigator, and I wrote how to investigate a haunted house properly, how to identify what's going on, the very important questions that you have to ask the family. And some are very personal questions, about their religious faith, do they have any history of the house or the land that it was built on? I mean, we only know a very short history of New England based on the time that it was New England. But I mean, it was Indian land. It was, who knows where it was or how places were that are older and where more tragedy could have happened, or places where you'll have more haunting phenomena. But explaining the questions that you ask the family. Has anybody ever played with a Ouija board? Has anybody ever practiced black magic or dabbled in witchcraft? Or do you think anybody's ever been cursed? And everybody chuckles when they hear that one, but that's a very real question. You can have somebody
Right.
you can have a girl in school who's, very upset that, one of the boys didn't give her any attention, and she decides that she's going to play around with a voodoo doll or practice Santeria, which is very real, or do something in some way using her intention to willfully cause harm on somebody else. And that's very real. Curses are very real, as are our thoughts directed at anybody. So I'll get into that.
Absolutely.
Too. So how to investigate a haunted house, how to deal with it, how to basically, like Ed says, never, unless you know what you're doing, try to initiate contact or demand that they display some sort of fantastical evidence for you to witness, and never, by all means, never physically challenging them. If they're human spirits, that's one thing. But if you have an inhuman, diabolical spirit in there and you're basically saying, let's go, you're in big trouble unless you really know how to defend yourself and know who you are. That's the key thing. Most of us think we're insignificant little humans, and, we need to go to church and be blessed by a priest in order to be, protected and so forth. But that's the type of person that's in deep trouble, asking to challenge these spirits. And I, on the other hand, like anybody can, the minute you understand that we are infinite, here's the thing, here's the absolute key for anybody doing paranormal research, in my belief system. The minute you come to the understanding that you are immortal, infinite consciousness, an indivisible or an individual fragment of the whole of all of creation, or God, a child of God, a seed of God, a God seed, or a human God-man, never separate from God, always protected by God, but always radiating from your core this one golden sphere of light, which is your individualized spark of God light. And you are always protected, nothing can assault you or harm you. And because you're of a high vibration and loving consciousness, unity consciousness, meaning that we're all connected, we're all one, no one is any better than anybody else, but you know that you are a high vibrating being, you're going to be protected, and that's why I always felt safe. In houses where there's demonic forces, one standing on the stairway was another story, from this other case very early in my career working with the Warrens, but that's another story too. But in the book, without spoiling it, we use a specific process to cleanse the house or clear it. And then there's other things that happen too. But
Isn't that referred to as suffumigation, I believe.
Suffumigation, which is the way it was described to me.
Okay.
But I don't know if I want to spoil the story, but it's basically a blessing of places. It's no different than smudging using.
Okay. And that's what I kind of associated it to. Now referring to demons, something kind of occurred to me. With demons, have you ever been involved with demons that have fought each other, or say a spirit that has fought with another spirit?
Yes, that happens all the time because there's always a power situation going on. When you have human spirits, for instance, the woman who died in Vermont, she was a woman, kind woman, most likely, you would assume. Most people are kind generally. But she was in an immense state of sadness and grief, looking for her child. That's what her state of mind is in this situation in this house. There was a man in the house who could have been her husband or a grandfather or father or somebody associated with that property who was a very dominating, controlling, manipulative, negative human consciousness. And that type of being is very dangerous, living or dead, because they have no qualms about trying to harm people who are living, but they're also manipulating, stealing energy from, controlling, and using the other less powerful spirits. It's like, it's the alpha male, for instance. And then you'll have negative spirits, inhuman diabolical spirits, which are devils, demons. Devils there is a hierarchy in there. It's a very rare occasion where you'll get a devil, but you'll get them. And that's 10 times worse than a demonic entity. And they're all different classifications. But I mean, the situation with inhumans always coming in, if there are human spirits hanging around long enough, the inhumans will find them, manipulate them, steal their energy, control them and have them do their bidding. Because it's just the powerful one's going to control the weak one. That's just the way it is. And the only way out, unfortunately, at that point for them, these human spirits have been around for so long, a lot of them tend to forget that they were ever even human, and they start becoming darker in color. Okay, because they're more fearful, they're low energy, they're very negative. They grow more and more negative because they become more and more lost. Okay, from the truth of who they are, and versus somebody who's just fresh out of their body saying, "Oh, I'm conscious. There's that brilliant white light. I'm going to go into that light and get out of here." That's the best thing. Everybody's going to experience that. Everybody is going to leave their bodies, alone or with a group in some kind of calamity or whatever it is. And it's very important. It's crucial for everybody to know you've got to go into that light. Don't be afraid of the light, because people steer away from it, become lost souls, and you steer away from it because you're afraid to face God or judgment. That's a biggie. You realize, hey, I'm conscious. What do I want to go cross over there and risk being thrown into the pits of hell for? I'm going to stick around here. And I want my cigarettes and my beer, and I want to go spy on my ex-girlfriend, and I want to do all these things, and I can manipulate people and scare people, and I can stick around and have all this fun. But you're totally messing that up, because you're messing your experience up, because the first thing you want to do is get out. The third dimensional world has nothing left for you anymore. You're to cross over. You reevaluate your life yourself. You evaluate how you did yourself through your higher self, your higher consciousness. You pre-plan everything, in my belief, and you come here to learn whatever it is you came here to learn. The soul knows everything. If you're an infinite, immortal being, you know everything there is to know. But you have to come here to experience what it's like to be fat or skinny or black or white or gay or straight or a prince or a pauper or a murderer or a magician,
absolutely,
all those things. So you came to experience it. Showtime's over. Cross over, reevaluate, pre-plan your next incarnation, wherever that's going to be, whether it's here on Earth or some other planet or another dimension or whenever you want to come back. But a lot of people, like Ed said, in an auditorium one time, he said, if a bomb ever went off in this building, a good percentage of people wouldn't cross over. And some would fear going to hell or facing judgment, so they wouldn't want to cross through that vortex. Some would fear, don't want to see relatives that they don't like, for instance. They're going to be stuck in eternity with their mother,
Right.
Well,
Or mother-in-law for some of us.
yes, mother-in-law, that's a problem. Or, they want their smokes or their booze or their sex or their whatever. They have unfinished business, which is always very common, or they have to make sure that the murderer who killed them or destroyed their body is brought to justice, so they're going to stick around, or they don't even know they're dead. That's a big one. In fact, here's a very interesting story, just fresh off the presses. I met a new woman. I'm a spiritualist, and I have a lot of meditation groups, and there's this one group we have, circle or sphere of intention, which is it's a group of light workers like myself, spiritual people who are always trying to raise our vibration and, make sure that everybody else is trying to keep up a high vibration. But she was an EMS worker. And on several occasions, when the person that she was trying to rescue died, she would hear them in her head. And this one said, where am I? What's going on? What's going on? Where am I? She's like, oh, geez, I have to be the one to explain this to him. She says, you died. He's like, just like that? Just like that? What do I do now? And so she had the wherewithal to say, did you see a light when you left your body? Yeah. Well, call out for that light. And the secret is call out for your angels, call out for Jesus, call out for God or Buddha or whoever it is, call out for your parents and ask to be shown the way home. And that's what you have to do. You have to consciously use your free will to say, I need to be shown the way home. Help me cross over and help me, go complete my life experience the right way. And you'll go. And that ends the whole haunting phenomenon in the first place, which is my whole purpose. So when we were doing a case in Washington State where this man would be seen after his funeral every night in the home, scaring the whole family, I got a letter because there wasn't any email back then. And went and took one of my really close friends, or my two psychic moms, I call them, Valerie Crisp, and went to this house. And basically I picked up, which is another way to say discern or psychically become aware of, the fact that he wouldn't cross over until he was forgiven for something. There's something that happened, and he felt like he was a bad father or a bad husband, or something was wrong that he wanted to make sure was set right so he can have peace and cross over. So we asked everybody to sit in a circle and invited him to sit in front of his wife. And I picked up a name, and I can't remember what it was now, but it was his pet name for his wife that, I wouldn't have known. So that was confirmation that he wanted to start with his wife. And we asked him to sit in front of her and asked her to talk to him as if he were there, because he was. They just couldn't see him, and make peace. And it was very heart-wrenching, and, everybody's crying, and I love you, Daddy, and I'm sorry to say goodbye, and you're, really great, and you're...
Absolutely.
And, bring resolution to the whole thing. So it was very nice and wonderful until it got to one 14-year-old son who was livid, and he was just saying, I'll never forgive you for what you did to me, and we said, that's it. So I said,
interesting.
We said, it's not anybody else's business, but between you and your dad, but you have to come to understand that you sought the experience. Otherwise, you never would have experienced it. You contract for everything before you ever come here. Because everybody, if we're all immortal consciousness and we're all of unity consciousness, meaning we're all one, everything's wonderful, you're in bliss, which is what it is when you're over there, and you come here to participate in a play, for instance, because you want to experience, I'm infinite consciousness, but I want to experience going to Earth and just really being just beat up and verbally abused and just belittled, so I can feel what it's like to be powerless and humble, and you contract with the other person who's really a good, kind, infinite consciousness of a good nature. All right, I'll play my part, but you have to forgive me, when it's over, because you wanted me to do this. So anyway, gets very deep, but it makes a lot of sense. So he took about 20 minutes, and we said, you need to forgive your dad unconditionally, and forgive him and love him unconditionally. And you need to forgive yourself and love yourself unconditionally too, and bring resolution to this whole thing. It took about 20 minutes. And when he finally did it, he cried. The energy just was incredibly peaceful in the house. And we said, we're all in a circle still. We said, let's project our energy to the center of the circle from our heart, like it's a white light. And then Valerie had this huge quartz crystal formation called Herbie. But, because crystals are conscious too. They're first dimensional conscious beings. And people can't get their minds wrapped up around that sometimes. But and
I've never heard that. That's interesting.
The first dimension is the crystal mineral dimension, and the second is the plant, and the third is the animal. So anyway, so we imagine everybody creating this pillar of light coming from our hearts into the crystal through into heaven. And we asked him to call out for his angels and to Jesus, who was Christian, and to God and to his parents to ask to be shown the way home. He went, boom. Everything is wonderful. Everybody's at peace. He's never seen in the house again. There's a beautiful smell. There's always a very nice flowery smell when somebody crosses over, or when angelic forces rid the house of demonic forces, to show that their presence, that they're there. And I asked Lorraine the very same question you asked me. Have you ever witnessed an angel or an angelic being in a house where there's demonic forces? And her answer was yes. I don't know if they ever got any video evidence of that or anything, but video evidence is, as we've seen from the case I gave, from the very first case I investigated, just because you don't see it on film doesn't mean it's not there. We all saw the projection of what she wanted to send to us through our photosensitive pineal gland. But just because you don't get it on film, or if one person sees it and everybody else doesn't, that's still a very real experience.
Where is it that our listeners can get a hold of this?
Okay, I have it in several different formats. I have it in paperback, and it's 421 pages, including the analysis section. And it's available on my website, darksiege.com, DARKSIEGE.com. And I have autographed copies that I mail as soon as I have a PayPal option, and an autographed copy is $14.99 because shipping is extra. And I mail it as soon as payment is confirmed through PayPal. And it's also available on Amazon.com for $19.99 because they have free shipping. So you get an autographed copy for the same price as you would get through me personally versus going through Amazon, which they take a good percentage of the cost. So I'd appreciate people going through my website.
Absolutely.
And then it's available for Kindle for $9.99. And
excellent.
Instant download. And most people have gotten Kindles, but most people have purchased paperbacks directly from me in personal, meet and greets and that type of thing. I've had several book clubs order them too, but I'm getting fantastic reviews. And if anybody buys it, thank you very much. But I'm very, very interested in your reviews. Reviews will drive sales, and it lets people know that not only people have read the book, but enjoyed it and found it valuable. And that's really, really important to me. And if you would leave a review on Amazon, that would be great. And also sign my guest book on my darksiege.com book page, just so I know, who's out there and who's found it interesting and so forth. And I'll do my best to answer questions and, stay in touch. And I'm on Facebook too. My name is Jason McLeod, MCLEOD. And I have a Dark Siege page on my Facebook page. And I'm doing my best to try to use social media in the right way so I can make more and more people aware of it. And I'm joining all these paranormal groups and then posting a banner ad on there basically explaining my book. And the interesting thing in closing about my book is that, and I was hesitating, and I was on the fence about whether I was going to present it the way I did. And I did it the way I did. I was going to have the analysis section as an entirely separate book. But I decided that people who are interested in ghost hunting, and the paranormal, and demons and possession and all the horrific things that can happen, with Ouija boards and with demonic entities and so forth, would not be the type of people, by and large, who would go into a spiritual New Age section in a bookstore and pull off a book about the law of attraction or the universal law of intention, or how to raise your frequency, or how to smudge your house, or using sage or sandalwood, or how to raise your vibration, and how to do all of those amazing things. So it's kind of like it's a really scary real story, and then at the end is a really uplifting explanation of why all this is happening through quantum physics. And I had a quantum physicist basically say, you explain string theory in such an easy way for people to understand, and a way to actually apply it. And by that, I mean, is just by sending people thoughts. So when you have a connection with somebody, you're making instant connection with them. And I'll explain that in a second. But, and I explain all the activity through the law of attraction, the law of intention, which is very important. Just like Lou and I declared our intention to become paranormal investigators immediately and work with the Warrens, immediately it happened. and the law of conscious manifestation. You will manifest in your experience whatever it is that you want to experience, whether it's good or bad. And that's very, very important, just to understand, to watch your thoughts, because when you affect everybody with your thoughts, especially people that you're directing your thoughts to. And that's very important. Just like Kelly, was being affected by the spirit, and the spirit detected her because of her thoughts. So, I'm glad I did it that way, because people who are, I have a lot of people in my spiritualist community who don't want to read a scary ghost story because it's too scary for them, or it's fear-based. And I counter with that saying, knowledge isn't fear. Knowledge is power. To understand why things are happening the way they're happening is one thing, but to buy into the fear and put yourself into the situation of the characters experiencing this horrific infestation and oppression, that's another story. So I asked them just to read the analysis section and just, make a review on the analysis section. So I think I've done a really good job doing something different, and I'm very pleased with it. And I'm getting great reviews. So right now, all it is, and I really appreciate, Tyler, the opportunity to be on your show. You're the first radio show I've done, and I think it's
excellent. Great. Well, we're happy to have you, and we're just about as new to this whole, the internet and the social media thing as well. So maybe one more of those things, kind of a singularity thing that we're all kind of meant to. Sure. We all had the intentions, and I like the way you put that. I'm definitely going to be looking more into some literature along those lines.
Yeah, there's so much great information out there. But right now, my focus is basically I'm starting to get involved in some of these paranormal conventions and start to do some signings and selling. But my real interest is doing these types of interviews and lectures and presentations about the things that I've experienced and how I got involved in. I think that's really interesting information that I want to get out there, and that I feel is necessary, especially because of the one fact that so many people are out there looking to find ghosts and to find evidence of the supernatural. And whether they're going to use EMP meters, or they're psychic, or they're empathic, or they have abilities, or they're mediums and so forth. My only concern is, how well is everybody protecting themselves and declaring their intentions that only, that nothing harmful comes their way or negative comes their way? And two, if it indeed comes their way, or they stumble upon the wrong house at the wrong time or the wrong place, what in the world are they going to do about it? Because, getting involved in haunted houses is one thing, but if in rare cases, you'll have inhuman diabolical spirits, which Ed, I quote Ed because he's just so great, beings that have never walked the earth in human form. And I take it a step further to describe that they are outside interlopers. They're interdimensional beings who have no connection to our laws of physics and can do absolutely unbelievable, incredible things. And scare the living hell out of people, and to steal their energy, and to latch onto them, and maybe even follow them home. That's the scary thing. And one woman actually who, Nancy, Joe McGee, who quoted on my Amazon page, said, "No more ghost hunting for me," because she realized the real danger involved in it. And, I want people to understand, most importantly, my message is one of light, to let people understand that we're all connected. We're all connected to God. We're all individual aspects of the whole of God. And if you can connect to that divine spark, like I mentioned earlier, and realize who you really are, being a vast power, not powerlessness, is a great stepping stone in your understanding of the literal sea of discarnate spirits that are all around us, that we see, SEA. Of discarnate spirits that you don't see.
Right.
SEE. So that's my message, is basically I want to be known as a spirit helper, helping spirits cross over correctly, thereby ending the whole haunting phenomena in the first place, not sensationalizing it or, doing ghost tours and things like that. There are other people that are all about that, to each his own. We're all one. We all have free will. But I follow very strict policies, which are just from the heart, really. And that is just do no harm, and to also, try to clear the energy where possible. And there's several ways to do that, and explain that in the book too. Sufumigation, I'm going to quit in another 4 minutes and 30 seconds because I have to head out, and it's going to be exactly an hour and a half, I think.
Okay. Absolutely.
And any other time you want to do this, I'm game. So this has been great.
Great.
The sufumigation is a blessing of places, but it's also heavily involving prayer in the Psalms. And it's, in a way, challenging what's in the house, because you're basically declaring your intention to clear the house through prayer, which is high frequency declaration. Okay. And you could experience all kinds of problems there doing that as well. And the only negative experience I had ever doing sufumigation was being interrupted, where every time I would go from one room into the other, the telephone would ring 3 times. And it was just a way to break the concentration and make us have to start all over from the beginning, because you have to do all these prayers in order. But that's very interesting. But smudging, it's all frequency. And smudging is an American Indian practice using sage. You can do sandalwood. You can use frankincense and myrrh, which are high church incenses, which I use in the sufumigations. Just getting incense sticks and burning them in your home whenever you feel like there's just a negative presence in your house or something. You can demand and declare that I demand that any being of separation consciousness leave this apartment immediately and never return. I demand this. I declare this now to be so. And you can always call on angels and God but the power of this is one thing I didn't get to touch on here, but the power of prayer. The reason prayer doesn't work is because people pray from a statement of lack. God, please give me this new job, or please heal Aunt Lucy, or please do this. And you're declaring through that prayer that it isn't so. So if you take the Bible literally, I'm not saying that I do, but it was said that whatever you want, whatever you pray for in faith that is already received. So you basically, you make this affirmation: thank you, Archangel Michael, for ridding this apartment of any negative entities. I know this, I now this, and I declare it so. You're saying it's already happened. Thank you for freeing me of this negative energy that is trying to glom onto me. And grounding yourself is very important. Getting some black obsidian from a crystal store, and just imagining roots coming from your feet into the ground and grounding you, and Christ lighting yourself is the last thing I'll close with. And you imagine this ball of light in your center, golden white light, which is your connection to God, in the core of your being, expanding until it goes to the size of a softball, a basketball, and surrounds your entire body in this impenetrable, brilliant, high vibrating sphere of white light and golden light. And, just visualize this, and you can visualize a cross in it, or Christ, or an angel, or anything, and say, this is your protection, and nothing of any negative source or anything of unity, separation consciousness can come anywhere close to it, or penetrate it or affect it. You are, I am infinitely connected to the Creator and impervious to any of that. And believing it is crucial. It's all about belief too.
We'd like to thank you again, Jason, for being on the show. And once again, the book is Dark Siege, A Connecticut Family's Nightmare.
For more information about Jason and his books, please do go visit the website, oddrealityradio.com, and click on the guest tab. All of our past guests have links available to leave them a message or a direct link to their website. So check it out. For those of you interested in the music, also go to oddrealityradio.com and scroll to the bottom of the page. I've set up little links to every artist who's been kind enough to lend their musical talents to improve the quality of the show. So once again, I'd like to thank MOKHOV, Lights Out Asia, Ramses B, and Said the Sky for improving the quality of this show. So until next time, continue to investigate life through the lens of possibility. I'm Ty West. Take care.